Today, Biden rebuffs calls to step down as he sets his focus on NATO.
Ukraine will also be at the alliance's DC summit after a missile attack on a children's hospital exposed a need for better air defenses.
And a succession fight breaks out around another aging world leader, the Dalai Lama.
It's Tuesday, July 9th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes every weekday. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool.
And I'm Jonah Green in New York. World leaders are gathering today in Washington, D.C. for the 75th NATO summit. The meeting comes at a critical time for the military alliance, but also for its host, President Joe Biden. The 81-year-old is still fending off calls to step aside over concerns about his age. In an effort to stave off a possible revolt from within his own party, Biden sent a letter to congressional Democrats to make clear he's not abandoning his re-election bid, adding that while he's aware of their concerns, it was time to put them aside. Trevor Honeycutt covers the White House. So, Trevor, is that then?
No, this is a really critical week for especially lawmakers on Capitol Hill who have their own elections this November to decide if they want to still be aligned with this president or whether it makes more sense to keep him at arm's length.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be up to those lawmakers to look at his delivery and his performance this week and to calculate for themselves whether it makes sense to stay aligned with the president.
So that's Biden's domestic concerns. As for the international stuff, what are his goals for NATO?
When I speak to national security people in the administration, they tell me they've never seen the level of risk abroad that we have right now in terms of the potential conflict and confrontation with Russia, with China, with Iran, over Israel's war in Gaza. And then, of course, you've got this ongoing conflict in Ukraine, and then concerns about how China is acting over the Taiwan Strait and in the South China Sea. Ukraine is going to be at the top of the agenda, figuring out what kind of assurances and support all of these countries that are weary with this war, what they can do for this country that to the outside world seems to be stuck in a stalemate with Russia.
Biden's troubles at home also means that Donald Trump's shadow is kind of hanging over this gathering.
Diplomats, foreign leaders are all trying to get a sense right now of what the domestic political situation is in the United States. They are partly coming here with a desire to find out whether Biden is going to be president for another 4 years. And if not, what a Trump presidency would mean for their countries.
Rescuers searched through the rubble overnight after Russia hit the main children's hospital in Kyiv in a rare daylight attack. Parents holding babies walked in the street outside the hospital, dazed and sobbing. Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, said it was one of the worst attacks the capital has seen. Dozens were killed across other cities in Ukraine in the deadliest airstrikes for months. The Kremlin has said it was Ukrainian anti-missile fire, not Russia, that struck the children's hospital. Tom Barnforth is our chief correspondent for Ukraine. Tom, is this daytime strike a significant change of approach by Russia?
It's reasonably unusual for a major missile attack to happen in broad daylight. This one happened in the morning. The truth is we don't really know why the Russian armed forces chose that time. Russia is always kind of regularly changing its tactics and its targets to try and find a weak link.
What does this say about Ukraine's air defences?
I think the most notable thing here is that there was a reasonably large number of missiles fired at Kyiv that Ukraine was unable to intercept. So there's been this perception for quite a long time that the Ukrainian capital has been an almost impregnable fortress where the air defence umbrella is so good that Russian airstrikes can't get through. This attack clearly showed that that is not the case at the moment.
Does that impact what President Zelensky will discuss at the NATO summit?
Yeah, so I think it is actually one of the top things on the agenda. So Ukraine, above all, would really like to receive a political invitation to join the military alliance at this summit, although it's obvious that that's not going to happen. So I think what we're going to see is NATO unveil a package of measures to help Ukraine, which will bill as a bridge to membership. And Ukraine is also hoping there'll be a package that will help strengthen its air defenses.
What about US politics? How does Ukraine see a potential Donald Trump presidency?
Obviously, Ukrainians are watching this very carefully. Trump has threatened to cut flows of assistance to Ukraine if he gets elected. He has also said he thinks he could negotiate a peace deal in 24 hours. Officially, Ukraine has said it will work with whoever Americans elect as their president. And beyond that, they're being very careful about what they say, given the obvious sensitivities. People in Ukraine also tend to note that it was under Trump that the first lethal aid to Ukraine was actually provided. And I think also there's this sense in Ukraine that forcing it into an unfavourable settlement with Russia would amount to a major defeat for the West itself.
The Republican Party has released a policy platform that waters down language on abortion. The platform puts forward Trump's latest position that the issue should be decided by states, making no mention of a federal ban or protecting fetus rights, both tenets demanded by influential evangelicals.
We have almost close to 2.7 million people without power in Texas.
Texas acting governor Dan Patrick making remarks on Tropical Storm Beryl, which has killed at least 3 people, flooded highways, closed oil ports, and cancelled more than 1,300 flights.
Last month was the hottest June on record. That's according to the EU's Climate Change Monitoring Service. And some scientists are warning that 2024 could be on track to be the world's hottest recorded year, with climate change and El Niño both pushing temperatures to record highs.
The trial of actor Alec Baldwin on the 2021 fatal shooting on the set of the film Rust starts today. He faces a charge of involuntary manslaughter in the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Over to markets now, where everyone's watching for Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's testimony before the US Congress. Investors were cautious ahead of Powell's 2-day testimony, which comes against the backdrop of soft labour market data increasing bets of a September rate cut. Central banks around the world will be looking at the Fed's move to chart their interest rate trajectory. And if you're interested in how major central banks are set to navigate interest rates in the months ahead, check out tomorrow's episode of Reuters Econ World with our very own Carmel Crimmins. You can catch it on Reuters.com or the Reuters app or wherever you get your podcasts. Tibetan children performing in Dharamshala for a recent US delegation, there to promote the Resolve Tibet Act. The new law aims to counter China's claim that Tibet has historically always been part of China. The Indian town in the foothills of the Himalayan mountains is host to both Tibet's government in exile and its spiritual leader. The Dalai Lama turned 89 on the weekend and, as he ages, it's raising concerns about both his successor and the future of a Tibetan movement. We spoke to Charlotte Greenfield to find out more about the succession plan.
The Dalai Lama has said in the past that this identification process would take place after he turns 90. But many Tibetans in exile are also starting to worry about China trying to insert itself in that process and claim its own next Dalai Lama. So the Chinese authorities have said that they have a right to have the final say on who the next Dalai Lama is. The successor is going to be a child, so they're likely to be inexperienced and unknown on the global stage. So that sparked concerns about whether the Tibetan movement might lose momentum or even grow more radical amid heightened tensions between Beijing and Washington.
What have you heard from Tibetan leaders about what impact the new US law will have and the outlook for the cause?
I spoke to the political leader of the Central Tibet Authority. He's known as the Sikyong, and his name is Penpa Sereng. He told me that the new Tibet legislation passed by the US is a significant breakthrough.
So this Tibet Resolve Act will be the first in a country now who will challenge China's claim over Tibet.
So at the moment, the Tibetan movement very much revolves around the current Dalai Lama. He's a hugely important figure. And the CTA has been working on its plan for the future. And they've actually had a big breakthrough recently with the Resolve Tibet bill, which US lawmakers are saying will send a message to China that it has to start having talks with the Tibetans in exile about a future for Tibet and for the possible return of the Dalai Lama before the current Dalai Lama passes away.
For more on any of the stories we featured today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. And to never miss an episode, subscribe on your favourite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.